Today I'm bringing you some cozy fantasy book recommendations because it is the season for cozy fantasy. It's a very dark and gloomy day outside and all I want to do is wrap up in a blanket and read a cozy fantasy book, which is exactly what I'm going to be doing after I film this video. But before then, we're going to talk about some of my personal favourite cozy fantasy books. A lot of these are quite popular, so I don't think there's going to be many surprises, maybe one or two. But I am a firm believer that even if you don't usually read fantasy, you should still try cozy fantasy, especially if the reason why you don't typically reach for fantasy is because you don't like reading complex world building. If you don't enjoy reading about battles or fight scenes, then you're not going to get much of that in cozy fantasy. It's much more about the wholesome vibes, it's about the atmosphere, it's about the characters, and usually they're more slice of life. So hopefully you will find a recommendation in this video. We're going to kick things off with a book that I gave 5 stars last year. I don't see many people talking about it on BookTube, and that is The Dallergut Dream Department Store by Mi Lee. This is translated fiction. It was originally published in Korean. The way that I like to pitch this book is imagine when you fall asleep, but before you start dreaming, you go to this in-between world where there are department stores that sell dreams. The main character begins working at one of these department stores, and it's very much about the concept of dreaming. It has some very thought-provoking commentary, I think, on the nature of dreams and why we dream. You follow this main character as she gets to know the various customers that come into the store, as well as her work colleagues and the people that create these dreams. It's very wholesome, very much all vibes, not much plot, but I really enjoyed it. And there is also a sequel, which I didn't like as much, but I still think it is worth picking up. Next up, we have Can't Spell Treason Without T by Rebecca Thorne. This is the first book in a series. So far, I've only read the first 2 books and I enjoyed them both. The first book is my favourite, but I've heard really good things about the rest of the series, so I do plan on continuing it. In this, we are following Raina and Chianthe. I always forget their names, but they are an established couple, which I think is very rare to find in fantasy. They met and fell in love before the start of this first book, and the book opens with them deciding to leave their stressful lives behind, leave behind all of their responsibilities and start a bookshop that is also a tea shop, or it might be a tea shop that's also a bookshop. They move to this small town that borders Dragon Country, and the plot for this involves the dragons who are terrorising this town. It does feel like it's got slightly higher stakes than a typical cozy fantasy, but my definition of a cozy fantasy is one where you know that everything is going to be all right in the end. Just bear that in mind before you pick this up. It does have a hint of adventure and there are some more tense moments, but not really, not what you would typically find in a fantasy. I loved how this first book involved the main characters starting this business and you got to know all of the different people who live in this small town. I thought it was just very, very wholesome. And the second book is themed around pirates, so it kind of continues the plot from this first book where the main couple travel to this region where the person who's kind of running this region asks for their help because there's a pirate who is causing some trouble. This gets a lot of comparisons to a series that I'm going to be talking about later on in the video, but if you like the idea of following a sapphic couple over multiple books, because I believe the later books in this series also follow this same couple, you really get to know them, I think, is the benefit to reading this series. So yeah, if you're interested in a longer cozy fantasy series, then would really recommend this one, even though I've only read the first 2 books, but the first 2 books were pretty good. Next up, we have some cozy witchy reads, and the book that I'm going to be focusing on first is Rewitched by Lucy Jane Wood. I actually listened to this one last year on audiobook. The narrator was fantastic. They have a northern accent, and there's something about the northern accent, can't say that word. There's something about their accent that I just find so comforting, and it just feels like a warm hug in a book. So in this one, we're following Belladonna Blackthorn. Is that her name? Let me just double check, actually, I've got that right, yeah. Belladonna Blackthorn, Belle is what she goes by, and she is approaching her 30th birthday, and she is a witch, but she's kind of lost touch with her magic, and she learns on her 30th birthday that she has to prove to her coven learn that she is worthy of having this magic. This, in my opinion, delivered the 90s cozy witchy vibes, and it also has some really great messaging around believing in yourself and having that confidence, especially as you're approaching a milestone birthday. Like I said, the audiobook for this was fantastic. The narrator does all of the different accents and voices for the different characters, so they feel very easy to distinguish. I did start the next book by this author, which is called Uncharmed. This is technically a standalone, but it's set within the same world as Rewitched. I started this a few weeks ago, but I felt like I wasn't quite in the right mood for it. I've been feeling a bit slumpy with audiobooks, so I put it down, and I do plan on returning to it at some point. But this follows Annie, and she is a people pleaser. She runs a bakery, which I loved. The little bits that I read from this, I loved the descriptions of the baking. It was just so, I mean, that's what you want to read, isn't it, in a cozy fantasy? You want to read incredible descriptions of food. And I think this is a book about the main character learning, it says here actually, learning to break the spell of perfection and learn that she doesn't need to stress herself out in order to please other people. So I do really want to get to this at some point, because from what I read, I think I'm going to like this even more than I liked Rewitched. Another author who writes the best cozy witchy books, in my opinion, is Sangu Mandanna. And the first book that I want to talk about is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. The two Sangu Mandanna books that I've read are both cozy witchy stories. However, I want to make it very clear that they are not set in the same worlds. They're both set in the UK. However, they are completely separate, and the way that the magic works is completely different. So just in case you were confused about that, I wanted to get that out of the way before I forget. But going back to The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, this has a main theme around loneliness. We follow Mika Moon, who is a witch, and in this world, witches live in isolation because when a group of witches get together, they tend to attract magic and chaos can ensue. So Mika is used to being alone. However, in order to feel some type of community, she makes videos online about being a witch, not expecting anyone to take her seriously and think that she's a real witch. However, someone gets in touch with her because they've seen her videos, worked out that she's a real witch, and they need her to help them. They have 3 young witches living on this estate, and these young girls aren't able to control their magic, and it's all, becoming a bit out of control. So Mika goes to this estate, this house where these 3 young witches are living, and she helps them. She begins to tutor them. I loved the relationship between Mika and these 3 girls, and there's also a hint of romance. There is someone who is, I think he's some kind of caretaker or librarian. It's been a while since I read it, so I can't quite remember, but this is not, in my opinion, a romance. It is more about the found family, and the romance then takes the centre stage for a little bit. There's a brief spicy scene just to set expectations, but it's not what I would call a romance. It's a found family story. Sangu Mandanna's most recent release is A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping, which I read a couple of months ago. This has similar wholesome vibes, but it follows a main character who, when she was a teenager, she was exiled from her guild because she performed this spell which isn't allowed, and it ended up zapping most of her magic. So now she's, I think, around 30, and she runs this inn with her aunt, where over the years people have come to stay and they've just never left. The love interest is, I think, some kind of historian or researcher who shows up at the inn, and he may have the answers as to how Sarah, the main character, can restore her power. What I loved most about this book was how all of these characters were so warm and welcoming and accepting of other people, because they've all been in situations in the past where they have been made to feel unwelcome. It was so wholesome, and I had some issues with the plot towards the end. Also, the romance seemed to be bubbling along steadily until it was like full steam ahead. So that was a little bit jarring. However, it was the found family that I loved. There's also a zombie chicken, or is it a zombie rooster? I think I was right the first time. It's a zombie chicken, and there were just so many moments in this that made me laugh out loud. There's also a a fox who, I don't know how much to say, but there's just so many different personalities within this found family group, and I loved all of their interactions. I thought this was done so well. It wasn't quite as polished as the Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, but Sangu Mandanna is now an auto by author for me. Next up, I wanted to mention a cosy sci-fi, because I think that if you are reading cosy fantasy, then you should give this one a go as well, because this is one of my favourite books of the year so far. It's The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. It's book one in the Wayfarers series. However, from what I understand, the way that this series is structured, the books are set within this same future universe. However, you follow different characters, and sometimes there's crossovers with characters, but they all wrap up as standalone stories. The books are set way, way, way in the future, where humans have left Earth, gone out into the galaxy, and began to mingle with other alien species. And it's very much about the importance of communication and understanding other people's cultures. In this first book, we follow the crew of a ship called the Wayfarer. Their job is to punch holes through the galaxy to make better transport links. The plot isn't really important, but it's very much about the characters. We're following this character called Rosemary, who has just joined this ship, and she is human, but there are non-human characters that she is now working with. It's very character focused, but again, I just loved all of the different personalities in this. And the second book, which I have also read, A Closed Uncommon Orbit, I loved that even more. That one is about an AI who has been placed into a physical body, and it's about how they are processing their thoughts on that, how they feel uncomfortable in their skin, which doesn't even feel like their skin. I've only read 2 books in this series, but I already feel like it's going to become a new favourite series of all time. Both this and A Closed Uncommon Orbit were 5 stars for me, and I really want to read the next book before the end of the year. No Cozy Fantasy video would be complete without me talking about Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry. So if you have no idea about this series, this is the series that got me into reading cozy fantasy. Legends and Lattes is the first book. This introduces the main character of Viv, who is an orc that decides to give up her warrior ways to open a coffee shop in a city that has never heard of coffee. And it's all about her process of starting this business and the people who help her. The food descriptions are incredible. There are some iconic characters in this, and I was so excited after I read this to hear that a prequel was coming out. So Bookshops and Bone Dust is set about 20 years, I think, ish, before Legends and Lattes. It follows a younger Viv who is injured in battle. She's very new to this lifestyle, but she has this injury and is sent to this seaside town to recover. While there, she comes across a bookshop that seems to be struggling, and she helps revitalise this bookshop, and it's about the love of reading, and I loved it. This does have a little bit more action than Legends and Lattes. Legends and Lattes is very slice of life, whereas in this there is a plot kind of bubbling in the background to do with this necromancer that Viv and her crew in the beginning are trying to find. I didn't enjoy this one quite as much as Legends and Lattes, but both of them I think were 5 stars for me. This is where it gets a little bit confusing, because there is now a sequel to both Bookshops and Bone Dust and Legends and Lattes. That is Brigands and Bread Knives. This comes out, I think it's mid-November in the UK. I was very kindly sent an advanced copy by Book Break. I will have a standalone review for this. I think it'll be the next video that goes live after this one, so check that out if you're interested in my thoughts on this. I am currently about a third of the way through, and I'm enjoying it just as much as the first 2 books. This is set about 20 years after Bookshops and Bone Dust, but I think not far after Legends and Lattes. So it's a true sequel, and it follows Fern, who is the bookshop owner from Bookshops and Bone Dust. The final recommendation that I wanted to give is very seasonally appropriate because it is Midnight in Everwood by M.A. Kuzniar. This is a Nutcracker retelling, so if you're looking to pick this up, I think that December would be perfect. It's very whimsical and feels very magical and festive, and just the atmosphere I think is perfect for this time of year. It follows a main character who loves to dance. She loves the ballet, However, this is set during Edwardian England, and her parents want her to give that all up in order to get married. I don't want to say too much more than that, but this is another one that has great food descriptions. I feel like that's a common recurring thing in cozy fantasy. The setting just felt so immersive. I felt like I was transported into the book. I'm not sure whether this is marketed as YA or adult. I feel like it could be both. It has that whimsical, fantastical, fairy tale-like feeling. It gets a little dark in places, but nothing that's too graphic, in my opinion. I know that M.A. Kuzniar has quite a few books that seem to be kind of wintry fantasy, and I really want to check that out. If you've read any of them, please let me know if there's any that you would recommend. But otherwise, I am going to be wrapping up this video here, so thank you for watching if you made it this far. Let me know in the comments if you have any recommendations for your favourite cozy fantasy books. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I've talked about, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me, but otherwise I will see you next time. Bye.